Hi, my name is Chris Sturhan. Welcome to another episode of Drinks from Eddie Muller's Noir Bar. Each week we take a chapter from the book Eddie Muller's Noir Bar, cocktails inspired by the World of Film Noir, and we look at the film and we make the drink associated with that film. Today we're going to the exotic South Seas by way of a Hollywood tiki bar known as the Blue Gardenia, and we're going to be examining the film, the Blue Gardenia, and the drink, the Polynesian Pearl Diver, or just the Pearl Diver. Now, the Blue Gardenia was directed by Fritz Lang, who was a German director who made some very good films early on in his career and continued all the way through the rest of his career. But early on, he made one of the most influential and best very early science fiction films with Metropolis. He made one of the very best and very earliest proto-film noir film with M. When he immigrated to the United States, he continued to make film noir films with Scarlet Street and Woman in the Window, and the Blue Gardenia kind of fits right in with all of that. Now, the Blue Gardenia stars Anne Baxter, Richard Conte, Ann Sothern, and Raymond Burr. The plot involves Raymond Burr being what we would now call a serial date rapist. And basically, if you think about it, Anne Baxter is way out of his league. But in a moment of weakness, she ends up going out with him, and they end up at the Blue Gardenia. And Raymond Burr starts pouring Polynesian pearl drivers into her, and gets her very drunk, and then he lures her back to his place. Now, you can probably guess what's going to happen next, and you'd probably be partly right, but it doesn't actually unfold the way you might think it would unfold, which is kind of nice. So it makes the movie more interesting. That's one of the main things I like about it. I do have to talk a little bit about Raymond Burr. I grew up with Raymond Burr as the portly good guy on TV in Perry Mason and in Ironside, and then again in Perry Mason, because they made the made-for-TV Perry Mason movies forever and ever and ever and ever. I didn't know until I was about 21 that Raymond Burr had a whole nother career before being the portly TV good guy as the portly movie bad guy. When I first saw Rear Window, he's the killer in Rear Window, and that was kind of a shocker for me when I was that young. And then as I saw more film noir films, he plays the bad guy a lot. He's often a gangster or a thug. In this case, he's a womanizing scumbag. And so they all kind of in his wheelhouse, and he's very good at doing that. So I would also like to mention that this film features an appearance by Nat King Cole. And in my book, Nat King Cole can do no wrong. He's just one of the greatest artists of that era, and it's really a treat to see him. He was performing the song Blue Gardenia, which I assume the studio hoped would be a big hit for him. I'm not really sure whether it came out that way. It doesn't seem to show up on a lot of the CDs I buy, and whenever I see a Nat King Cole CD, I usually buy it. It's pretty heavily orchestrated. I would have rather seen Nat King Cole just playing a piano, because he is a phenomenal jazz pianist. If you ever get a chance to hear the Nat King Cole trio, where it's just him and a guitar and bass, he is amazing. I mean, he has that voice, but he's also a great piano player. My only serious regret with this film is that they really didn't give Nat King Cole any dialogue. Most of the time when you have jazz people appearing in a film, they'll end up talking to some of the characters, and they didn't do that with him, and I think we all know why. So anyway, we're going to move on to the drink, the Polynesian Pearl Diver. And this is not really a drink. It's the trade winds across cool lagoons. It's the Southern Cross above coral reefs. It's a lovely maiden bathing at the foot of a waterfall. It's kind of poetic. Those aren't my words. and they're not really. Raymond Burr says that to Ann Baxter while he's getting her drunk. They're not really his words either. There are in the movie what was printed on the menu, and Raymond Burr has just memorized it so that he can use it on the women he takes there. So anyway, this is a rum drink. I didn't know a lot about rum until a couple of 3 weeks ago. Rum is kind of the Wild West of the spirit world. There really are no rules for rum other than it needs to come from sugarcane or sugarcane products. And as a result, it can be aged, it can be unaged, it can be clear, it can be brown, it can be very, very brown, it can be a very light brown. The distillers can add sugar to it. The distillers can add spice to it, as the success of Captain Morgan would attest to. So there's a lot going on. So you have to be very careful of rum because there's so much of it out there, and it's done in so many different ways. In this case, we're using just a very small amount of this, which is a demerara rum, which comes from Guyana. This one I had never heard of until I read this, and I went out and bought it. And the first thing I did when I got home was I opened it up and poured it in a glass and started drinking, took a sip of it. And it was very, very strong. It was not strong alcohol-wise. It was strong. The flavor profile was very strong, but I took a sip of it and I was like, oh my God, I can see through time. That's the type of flavor it had. It kind of almost floors you. You're getting a lot of caramel flavors. You're getting some burnt flavors. You're getting some spice flavors. It's a little overwhelming, but we're only using a little bit of it. But I have a feeling this is going to be the backbone of this drink. Now, this drink does call for a blender, and I don't have a blender, so I'm going to just wing it with crushed ice and a shaker. So what we're going to start with is we're going to start with our gold rum, and we're going to do 1.5 ounces of that. Okay, and then we're going to do our nice demerara rum, and we're going to do just 1/2 ounce of the demerara. In fact, we're doing a half ounce of everything else here, and we're doing that. And oops, let's leave that out. Put that over. And then we're doing a 1/2 ounce of orange juice. Okay. And we're doing a 1/2 ounce of fresh lime juice. Okay. And we're doing a 1/2 ounce of this. Now this is kind of, the drink calls for Gardenia mix. This is kind of a simplified version of Gardenia mix. It's basically it's basically simple syrup with cinnamon, vanilla, and allspice. I made this up the other day, and it smelled wonderful, so much so that I had to kind of break it out and put a little bit on a spoon and taste it real quick, because it seemed amazing. I would put this stuff on cake. So this is really good. Then we have 1 dash of Angostura bitters. Oop, that's probably a big dash, but we're not going to worry about it. And then we're going to do crushed ice. And it calls for about 1/2 cup of crushed ice, so I'm going to call that 1/2 cup. And I'm going to put it in my shaker in lieu of a blender. I do have a blender. I have no idea where it is right now. We don't use it very often, so I'm not going to do that. And then I'm going to strain this into what is effectively a large lowball glass. Okay, wow, that smells really good. I can smell it from back here. Now, then we fill the rest of the way up with crushed ice. By the way, this is a Lewis bag. It's basically a canvas bag. You can order them. They come with a wooden mallet, and you can use it to crush ice, and it crushes the ice really nice. So we're going to top that off with more crushed ice. Okay, and there we go. All right, now that's a pretty decent amount. Now, this does call for a garnish of edible flower and lime wheel. I couldn't find edible flower. I did go to these places that have been popping up in California. They're called dispensaries, and they sell both floral and edibles, but they didn't seem to be the same thing we were talking about for cocktails. So what I've got here is a lime wheel, a orange wedge, and then a mango wedge. And I think I'm going to just lay that kind of across the top. And then, since this has so much ice in it, I think this is a drink that deserves a straw. So we're going to give this a shot. Wow. That is kind of amazing. There's a lot of stuff going in there. You can definitely taste the rum, but it's offset by the citrus you have. It's really tasty. It's very hard to describe because you got so many flavors kind of intermingling there. I'm definitely getting those caramel notes. I'm definitely getting that burnt flavor from the demerara. I tell you, Raymond Burr started pouring these things in me, I'd go back to his apartment. So, from back corner of Eddie Muller's Noir Bar, we'll say cheers. And Raymond, if you're out there, what are you doing after the show?